'cause fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live stream and podcast. My name is Rich Natoli. I am the regular host of this Monday night edition, and I'm joined as often by the lovely and talented co-host, Ed Gobo, owner of Cat and Hanks Tackle. How you doing, Ed?
Doing well tonight, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. It's crazy weather. So I'm with my kids home from college. I am back in the garage in the shop doing these, and we had just a brutal storm just come through.
So it'll be here in an hour.
Yeah, I remember last year we had one, and it was just rattling both of us. It hit me first, and then it just kind of rolled over you. Yep. So hopefully we'll get through this before it hits you, because it'll be there soon.
Sweet, can't wait.
Yeah. So before we get into this, I want to let people know in southern New Jersey, be very careful out there if you're going fluke fishing, because you are in the midst of, as Ed called it, the locust invasion of the water. The croakers are in. And Ed, as we were talking about, I have never in all my life fishing South Jersey constantly, and I'm talking like full summers down there for a few years. I have never seen as many croakers as I did this past Saturday. And it was insanity. And Ed and I were doing the back of the napkin math, and I probably went through well over $100 worth of gulp in one day for croakers.
I don't think I've ever caught one, to be honest.
I caught 3 in the past 3 years until Saturday, and I think I caught over 100 because I counted the first 30, and then I was like, and I was only about 45 minutes in. And I was trying not to catch them because I didn't want to destroy all my gulps. It was a tournament. I didn't want to have to, I wanted to have bait if I found a clean area. And 45 minutes I had, I think I stopped at 28. So, okay, I'm going to call it 30. And then at the very end of the day, I think it was 23 or 27 straight drops. The second that bucktail hit the bottom, I was hooked up with a croaker. I wasn't setting the hook or anything. And they were the bigger ones then. So they were just taking the whole hook. And so right there, I had at least 57 just in 27 drops at the end, or 23 drops at the end, whatever it was. And those 30 in the first 45 minutes. And I was out there from 7 a.m. until 3:30. So
I'm glad I missed it.
Yeah, it was bad.
For once.
It was bad. Yeah. So we're going to do one of these shows that we used to do before we were on the Salt Strong channel. And that's just you and me hanging out. And John came on for some of these in the past on the Fat Dad Fishing channel. But we're going to do tonight a old school, let's just talk about a certain species, and we're going to throw out tips. And we're going to focus on fluke for this one. So it's going to be fluke fishing or flounder fishing tips. And for those that aren't aware, flounder is south of northern New Jersey and fluke north of northern New Jersey. And we're going to go into that in detail. But we do have a bit of an announcement to make first. So we're going to jump into that first and let you guys all know that the live stream on Monday nights is actually going to go away, at least for a time. Part of that, there are several reasons. One of them is it's a lot. It's a lot with what Ed does in the summers. It's a lot with what I'm doing with Salt Strong in the summers. It's exhausting. But on my part, I'm going to be doing a lot more content within the Salt Strong Insider community. So for those of you that are watching that are members, Insider members, we'll be doing some lives inside the community on various topics. They won't be in this format. So that's why we're not just moving this inside. It will not be in this format, but Ed and I will be in there from time to time. Mm-hmm. And if you want to keep up with Ed, I know Ed has his following on here that are here just for Ed and not for me. Ed is actually posting his videos on the Fat Dad Fishing channel, so you can see him over there as well. But as I mentioned, Ed's going to be in the community as well on some of these things coming up. So that's the announcement. So this is going to be the last Monday night with a live stream on Salt Strong for a period of time. And who knows, maybe it picks up again, once we get into the fall or the winter season when things slow down a bit, we can get back into long format. And there you see Ed in the comments, James Flynn. He's all about, the number one fan. Ed's number one.
Jay, I am not the new fat dad. I'm just, I'm learning. I'm gaining the knowledge and becoming. I'm not there yet.
Well, I enjoy your videos. So, all right. So that's the announcement. So if you have any questions, if you're a Salt Strong Insider member, let me know. It's probably easiest to do it through the community. Just send me a chat. And if you want to email it, rich@saltstrong.com. Or if you want to put it in the comments here, we'll try to take a look at it and address it here tonight. But this is going to be an abbreviated one tonight. We're going to do around 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes. So we may not be able to get to all of them. So with that said, Ed, while I'm sitting here sweating in the hot garage.
Oh, welcome to my world.
I know. You ready to jump into some fluke fishing tips?
Yeah, before we do that, I do want to say thanks to everybody that has, tuned in, from the beginning and has supported us and everything that we've done and our projects outside of this, and especially Captain Hanks. That's been it's been well received, and we appreciate it. So
yeah, 100%.
And then as far as tips and stuff, why don't you start it off, and I'll follow your lead.
All right. So I'm going to start now. Some of these are going to be basic. There are some people saying, "Look, man, I saw in the chat somebody saying I've been skunked all year, haven't caught a fluke yet." I'm not scrolling through to see who it was, but it could be a veteran fisherman, a new fisherman. But when that happens, I like to do something which is just basically, let's go back to the basics, right? So let's go back to the basics and just kind of hear things over and over again. I actually did a flounder course, and I watched my own flounder course that I wrote, I did before every season, because I have to remind myself of some things. So that's what we're going to do with some of these tips. And we're going to start off simple. And we're going to start off with the simple phrase, size matters. And when you're fishing for fluke, size of the baits absolutely matter. So if you get, and I'm guilty of this, I'm the type of guy who will put on a bucktail. I'll put on a bucktail in the morning, and throughout the day, I will rarely think of changing that out during the day, but I will change the baits on there. But size does matter. And in my opinion, most days, not all days, but most days, the size of your presentation is more important than the color of the presentation. Ed, how do you feel about that?
I would 100% agree. For me, the last couple times I've been out, the fluke have been spitting up like shiners, or silver sides, we call them.
Yeah.
And the bait I've been using and having the most success with is one of those 6-inch jerk shads on a jig head. So, the old saying, match the hatch, is it definitely comes into play.
Yeah, I noticed when we went out, and to give people a little background. So before this tournament on Saturday, Ed wasn't fishing it. Ed was working on Saturday, but he and I went out on Tuesday of last week for a little pre-fishing. And he was going to do some sheep's head fishing. And that was really, I think, his focus. But mine was to fish that area, which was where the tournament was being held. And I was just going to scout around and see what kind of structure and what kind of trends we're holding for the day. And man, I was catching them on, I was changing the sizes, and I was catching them on the smaller presentations, and I was catching over slots. Right. I caught a couple of those. We were only single drifting areas, so we didn't really pound anything real heavy, but caught over 20 fish during the day. All fluke. That's what I was really focused on. I struck out on the sheep's head. Ed got into the sheep's head.
Yeah, my first one.
Yeah. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
But it was the smaller baits that were working. So I had 6-inch. I tried 5-inch in the jerk shads and the grubs, and I used 4-inch, and I used the 3-inch. and it was the 4-inch that caught the most. And there was one area that was the type of structure that I really thought would be good for the upcoming tournament. So I fished that multiple times, just going over it multiple times. Ed, you were there going over it multiple times with me.
Okay.
And I didn't catch any on the larger one, and I caught them on the smaller, and I caught them on multiple different colors in that size. I was just going through a tub of gulp, just pulling randoms from last year and putting them on. It was always the smaller ones that caught. So
see, now to affirm what you're saying is I was using one of the 5-inch grubs and I didn't get anything. Nothing touched me when we were drifting through there.
I did not catch on the 5-inch. I did catch on 4-inch, pink shine, I think sardine. There was a pearl. I had these old, what are they called? Nuclear chicken and blue fuse. Mm-hmm. So I was going through just I have random tubs of gulps that I was just kind of trying to get through so I could have an empty one for the tournament to put the new baits in. So size matters, and you should do what I should do more often. And when you're not getting a bite and you're in a spot that have those fish or should have those fish, before you pick up and leave, try a different size bait. And I would often recommend downsizing. Definitely downsizing, because we tend as fishermen to think bigger baits, bigger fish. It's not always true. I got the overslots on the 4-inch, not a touch on the 5 and the 6-inch. So, all right. Do you have a tip that you want to throw out there?
I'm going to go with the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. A lot of times, I know for myself, I'll get in my own head and then just totally blow out a good spot or miss over a good spot because I'm trying, especially tournament time. You're trying for that big doormats. I think that's one of the best tips I can give is just to go back to the basics and focus on what you've had success with and just go back to square one, and don't be afraid to scrap the whole project and go to another spot, another area. But just keep it simple, because it's 9 times out of 10, it's something silly that you're doing and that's not, causing you to not produce.
I agree. And I would say maybe the progression that you go through is, the baits, look at your presentations, but don't overthink it, right? Just don't overthink it. You don't have to do crazy things, but go through systematically until you figure it out. And when we were talking with, I guess you weren't on that one. When I was talking to Halkias and Doc.
Oh no, that was the chaos episode. No,
chaos episode. Yeah, well, they were saying, the attitude that Skinner has is he's always analyzing it, and he's always trying to figure out what it is that he's doing differently than somebody else, but he's not looking for big changes, right? He's changing up little things. He's changing up the gulp size. He's changing up the color. Then he's changing his presentation, right? When he realized that Doc had the noodle rod and he didn't have as much action on the lure, he slowed down his action. So it's often those little things. It's not always a huge move. So I would say, keep it simple. If you believe you're in the right spot, don't second guess yourself right away. Make sure that you actually put the time in on that spot to really check it out. And by putting the time in, I mean 15, 20 minutes. Don't single drift. Do several drifts over the structure that you're trying to fish, and then you'll have a pretty good sense as to whether or not you're in the right spot. All right. And that kind of covered one of mine, which was the action. And, so I'll just really quickly say, vary the action. Don't get caught in just one cadence for your presentations. A lot of people, when you're casting and retrieving, they get stuck in what is, I think, the most common is the twitch, pause presentation. That is not always the presentation that's going to produce. And what you should know, though, is on a single deployment of that bait. So I'm going to talk vertical jigging because you're in the water the longest with a vertical jig, right? If you don't have a bite, you can leave it down there indefinitely. Because you're going to be confident that you're still baited up, and you can go for a half an hour if you want. Well, when you deploy that bait, if you have a certain cadence, so let's say you're doing the Skinner rapid jigging, and then all of a sudden you change it, and you change it consistently. Now, I'm not saying change it meaning you stop for a second and then start again. I'm saying you do that, and then all of a sudden you do the long sweeps, the real, almost like a snap jig. That's going to change it. And you may have a fluke that was following that that's going to turn off at that point. You've just spooked it out of there. So change them up, but understand that if you change it up in the middle of a retrieve, you may be spooking off any fish that are following it. So I wanted to bring
that could be argued, though, because then that fish could feel like that's its meal getting away and it's going to snap at it.
It could. Yes, it could.
Because, I mean, we've all seen the Fluke underwater video. Fluke will follow baits for, what seems like a good while. So it could go either way.
It could go either way. It could. I tend to believe that be consistent on one deployment unless you're willing to change it up for an extended period of time on a vertical jig, especially. Now, on a cast and retrieve, I don't change it when I'm bringing it in. I would do full retrieves in different styles. So if I'm doing a twitch pause, I will then stop it for a second. But that's the only change that I'll do is the pause, right? I won't then start doing a straight retrieve or something like that. Unless I'm going to try to use the straight retrieve for that final strike right as I bring it to the boat or to my feet. All right, so here's a big one. And this is something, anyone watching, if you have a boat, you are probably guilty of this at one time or another, and you are. So this is a reminder to people. These fluke are very structure-oriented ambush predators. So if you are out there and you are fishing the channels with the fleet, and you go up to the one end of the channel and you drift it for the half mile or 2 miles straight down the middle of that channel, you are not fishing the structure of that channel. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to catch fish. There will be fluke in the middle of a channel.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does mean is you are putting yourself outside of the actual structure of the channel, which is the ledges on the side, the edges of it. And that is often where the bigger fluke are going to be. So there was a question in there from Mikey Diaz, and he said, how do I catch a doormat? A placemat will work. Well, Mikey, stop fishing or don't fish where everybody else is fishing. If it's a flat channel, there's nothing there. We used to talk about this, like think about it like a stadium, right? So if you're playing a game of hide and seek and you're hiding, are you going to go into the stadium, down onto the football field, and lay right in the middle of the football field and hide to try to surprise somebody? No. So why would a creature that is hiding in order to sustain its own life by getting its food go down on the 50-yard line and hide and wait for somebody to stumble by? No, they're going to be on the structure. They're going to be on the concourses. They're going to be sitting behind the bleachers. They're going to be hiding in there where you can't find them. So it's the same thing with it. That's exactly what it is with these ambush predators, especially a fluke. It's the ultimate ambush predator. It will get down into the sand. If it's a sandy bottom, it'll move its fins and it'll flip the sand on top, and you'll only see its eyes there quite often. Not always, but quite often. So it's built for hiding and camouflage. So stop looking for it in the middle of the channel. If you see 30 boats drifting down the middle of the channel, just go 30 yards off to the side. If there's a nice ledge, pick the side with the nice ledge, the sharp drop. And they will typically, in many tides, be found on the deeper side of that drop off. You have thoughts on that?
I 100% agree.
That's it? Come on, man.
I got nothing. You want to argue? I'm telling you no.
All right.
You're right. That's where they hide.
Yeah. Other kinds of structure. It doesn't have to be a channel. You don't have to fish a channel for fluke. I understand in a boat. Like I had a boat for years, and it was just easier just to get in the middle of the channel and drift, and then you don't have to worry for 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You can just drift and jig. Now, it's a little different now with trolling motors, but you don't want to get right up against sod banks all the time. I've hit sod banks with the bow of my boat before. It's not fun. It's not a fun feeling to hear it grinding off of the oysters and the mussels that are sitting there and not knowing if there's an old piece of wood that just punctured the hull. But if you can get over the structure, do it. But there's additional structure. And other structure to look for would be the confluence of currents. So anytime two currents come together and create a current seam, think of bridges. Bridges can have one current coming down one channel, As soon as it hits a bridge, every piling in that bridge is going to throw off multiple currents on the backside, and those eddies, that is structure. Any eddies that you see in the water, that indicates underwater structure. Up current, by the way, but up current from where you see the eddy is typically where that structure is going to be. So look for that. Guys in the mid-Atlantic, please start fishing docks, because the docks are beautiful structure. It throws off a ton of underwater currents for these fish to hide behind, and it gives them the really good cover to go out and spring their attacks. There's a lot of different things, but look for those things. I personally am always looking for the confluence of two or more currents and those current seams, and I'm fishing both the fast side and the slow side. You have one you want to throw up there? And by the way, while we're going through this, anyone in the chat, if you'd like to throw any of your tips in there, we'll be happy to throw them up on the screen. We are not here to tell you that we know everything and we have every single tip for catching flounder or fluke. So feel free to share in the chat, and we'll try to get them up onto the screen.
So there's two I'll throw up real quick. Big K is asking if fluke and flounder are fished the same. I would say no. You're saying no. I'm saying yes.
It depends. If you're talking winter flounder, and for those that are down south, there is a species of flounder called winter flounder. They have no teeth. They have these little tiny mouths. They're like the size of your pinky. You can get your pinky in their mouth on a nice size one. I think the biggest one I've heard of is like 7 pounds. They get up to like 7 pounds max. Whereas I think the world record for a summer flounder is 27 pounds. And I think a southern flounder is 22 pounds. So much different class of fish. So there is a difference in the two. If you're fishing for winter flounder, it's often much smaller baits. The strategy that I use in the mid-Atlantic, New Jersey area, and southern New York is going to be using a lot of chum, stirring up the bottom, and jigging those baits down there. So you present the same way, but it's different baits. It's different baits, and it's different sizes, definitely, because their mouth, they don't have that big predator mouth that the fluke have. So they're similar, but they're not the same. Now, if you say summer flounder, southern flounder, and Gulf flounder, it's all the same. Attack them the same way. There are some differences. For example, the Gulf flounder is much less reactive to changes in salinity. So you can find a Gulf flounder just sitting for a long time in fresh water. They're fine. You will not see a summer flounder doing that. That thing will jet out of there and head to an inlet to get that salinity back. The southern flounder, laid back southern style. Like, I can take it or leave it either way. It'll hang out in the brackish, it'll hang out in the salt, and it's not going to get driven off real quick from anything. So there are some differences, but as far as the tactics for all three of those are absolutely the same. If you can catch Gulf flounder in Texas, you can catch the summer flounder in New York. Absolutely.
And by his profile picture, I'm going to guess Texas. So he's probably on the Gulf.
Well, no, they have southern there as well.
Yeah, but they don't have the winter flounder that we have.
No, they're not going to have the winter flounder.
Let's see what else. Oh, James Flynn. What changed and why did all the croakers show up?
So what changed, James? This is scientifically proven. I did a lot of research on it. The reason that the croakers showed up in South Jersey was because it was a tournament that I was competing in, and it wanted to ruin my day.
Yours along with everyone else's.
It was brutal. Yeah, it was brutal. I think the biggest fish that I heard of, I think was only like 4 or 5 pounds for the entire tournament. Boats, kayaks, everything. It was just a really tough day. Honestly, James, I didn't really look close enough yet. The only thing I can think of is the shift of the wind, because we got that southwest wind that pushed up after the northeast, the northeast wind, which was pretty heavy on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then it shifted. That's my only guess. The water temperatures are great. They were pretty warm in the back. They're right where you wanted to be, around 70 degrees, but I couldn't tell you the exact reason, except for I was fishing a tournament that day.
And then Ben says, he's heading north on the expressway. The croakers are still there. So I'm guessing he attempted to fish today.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw Ben out on the water and he was getting them too. He didn't seem to think it was as funny as some of the other people that were on the water.
I'm so glad I didn't go.
Yeah.
Local legend around here, Mint. Thank you. He is a Sharpie on the sheep's head. You'll see him fishing all summer long, and dude catches fish. So shout out to him.
Yeah, I'm a fan.
This is a good one that just came through. I'm not even going to attempt the name. Says vet bills have cut into the fishing budget. What's a decent budget fish finder, or what features would you sacrifice to save money? Features, I mean, the budget fish finder, I have a Lowrance hook. It doesn't have any of the crazy down scan, side scan stuff. I think it's a 7-inch. I picked it up on sale at Walmart for like $100. So I put that on my son's kayak, and it works really well. It definitely lacks in some features as far as like the down scan, the side scan. The GPS function on it, like the mapping is really kind of like, remember the original Garmin handheld GPS things that you can like plot your trail? It's basically what it does. But as far as reading the bottom, it does a good job. So you can definitely sacrifice, I would say, in the GPS department. Most of us bring our phones, so we have access to those types of apps and stuff on our phone. So that would be my suggestion. Now, on my big water behind me, I have a Humminbird Helix 7 G4. It's some crazy thing. But the sonar picture on it is amazing. Like you can see a minnow swimming under the boat. So it all depends on, obviously budget, but if you're going to sacrifice, I'd say on the GPS side would be where I'd sacrifice.
All right. And for me personally, I have an old fish finder. So mine's 3 years old now. It's a Lowrance Hook 2 9-inch with the triple shot. So it has the down scan, the regular sonar. It has the side scan, and it has the really good maps. I personally would not skimp on the maps, and I would not skimp on just the regular sonar. But everything, you know what? Let's be honest. Everything has decent regular fish finder sonar. It's really the down scan where you get the difference between them. And in saltwater, especially for fluke fishing, I don't need the down scan. I hate using it. I don't see the purpose in using it. I just want to see variations in depth, and anything will give you that. So, and the side scan, I only use that when I'm looking for schools of bunker when I'm chasing striped bass. So for me personally, I'm looking, when I replace this, for just something that's going to have the same features. I prefer Lowrance and Simrad over Humminbird. I will not buy a Garmin, just because of some people that I know that have had them and just, they were just disappointed with the fish finder part of it. Love the GPS, but we're disappointed with the fish finder part. So, it depends on budget though. If you want to go as low as possible, the Garmin is probably the way to go though. It's decent.
I think Lowrance has something similar for around the same price. Cause I think, as Big K is saying that the Striker is about $100, which I know Lowrance has something in similar. It just all depends on the size screen you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cause I think the Lowrances, you can get them in like a landscape screen, whereas the Garmin's like a portrait screen.
Yeah.
So, and then Jay put up a good one. This time of year, you think live bait or gulp and/or plastics?
Well, I personally am going with plastics and gulp first, and I quite often will bring live bait as well. And I done really well on the live bait. However, as I look back, and I did look at reports from last year, and I did pretty well. I have actually done better on regular plastics with scents on them than gulp. And then after that was the live bait. And I'm going to be honest right now, one of the reasons I buy the live bait right now, and I only buy it from one shop, is because I want to support the local shop. So quite often I'll buy my $13 worth of, 1 pint of Achilles, and I will return to the water afterwards alive 3/4 of them. I may only use 3 or 4 throughout the entire day. So for me, in the tournament, I had some live ones as I was trying to get through the croakers. Didn't work. I was just trying to save some gulps, so I was sacrificing the live bait so that I wouldn't burn through all my gulps. But this time of year, I'm looking plastics and gulp. Are you in agreement, Ed? I know you're in agreement.
I am. There is one tactic I'm going to probably deploy this year is using a spot.
Yes.
So that's one thing I'm going to attempt. But on a regular day, if you call me and tell me we're going fishing, then I just gulp.
But you're not using those spot until August, September, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Late in the season.
Yeah. This time of the season, though, I've brought out my Sabiki rig every trip so far. I haven't used it yet. It's just, to me, it's a little too early.
I think that's it for questions right now.
Yeah. And Jay's asking spot for flounder. Jay, if you want to get into the bigger fluke, if you want to weed, and this is where the bigger baits, bigger fish come in. Yes. If you use a live spot on a circle hook and fish that, it's an outstanding way to catch the bigger fluke. And you'll be surprised at how small they are that will take an entire spot in one gulp. It was last year, the same tournament, and I caught a 22.5-inch one on a full size, and it was a big spot. It was big, and it just gulped the whole thing down.
You put it on the bucktail.
Yeah, I just put it on a bucktail and set it on the bottom as I was just talking to everybody, and I ended up pulling it in. I think it was I was dead sticking it too. So they definitely work. They definitely work. There's a couple of things I do want to bring up before we go, and I know we're coming up on the end here, but the first one is set it back. So if you get a strike, immediately set it back. And when I say immediately, if you do a hard hook set, and you lift that rod tip, don't slowly let it down. Just drop the tip as fast as you can so it regains the bottom, and then regain your connection with that lure, because a fluke will often grab it, drop it, and then either turn right back around and come at it again, or the 6 other ones that are following it will then attack it after the one drops it. So it's quite often not one of them that's messing with your bait down there. It's quite often multiple waiting in line. So once the dominant one takes its swipe, you get the second one, or you get the little ones nipping at it, and then a big one will come in and clear them out and go right after it. So don't ever give up on it unless you're fishing live bait. But I will also say this. You should be able to tell when your bait is off of your hook, right? So when you drop it down the first time, feel the action, feel the weight on that. And just losing Achilles on the end of a bucktail, you should be able to tell the difference in the weight of that when you're jigging. You should be able to feel that. So you should never be fishing without something on the end there unless you're not paying attention. All right. And then the last one that I have, water clarity matters. So size of the lure matters, and the water clarity absolutely does matter. Fluke so I see this in the chat right now. Use scents like Dr. Juice and everything like that, ProCure. So I agree with that. I think that is just another tool that you use. However, with Fluke, they are primarily sight driven. So if they can't see your bait coming through the water, they're probably not going to get up off the bottom and go look for it. They're ambush predators. They're going to ambush what they can see. Mm-hmm. And that means you have to understand what the water looks like. If you see a cloudy area, move to the clear side of it. If it's bordered by clear water, hit the clear water. That's where the fluke are going to want to feed. That's where they're going to see your bait. If the water is dingy, look for colors that complement those conditions. So if you drop your lure in the water and you're like, wow, I can only see like 6 inches. Okay, well, you better get something that's a little bit darker with some flecks of flash in there. The darker colors that are going to make it stand out more in the murky water. You're looking more for a silhouette at that point. If it's really bright and clear, go for something that's a brighter color, a white. That's where the chartreuse really works well. The bubble gum, the pink shine, all of those work really well. So clarity absolutely does matter, but it doesn't mean that you can't catch them when the water's really murky. But you may need to commit to actually hammering that site and just carpet bombing it. So don't single drift it, don't double drift it, don't stay for 15 minutes. If you think it's a good spot, stay for a full 45 minutes and just continually hit it, because if it's a 6-inch visibility, you need to cover every 6 inches in order to get that thing, to see that thing coming through the water. That's where the scent can help, particularly, but keep that in mind. Keep in mind that they're very visual when they're down there, and they will follow it forever. And they will often, just watch the underwater videos, they will often come up from several feet off to the side when they see it coming. And as soon as it passes them, they'll pick up and they'll come around and they'll start following it until they decide that they're going to bite. Any comments on that?
Can't argue with facts.
All right. Adam is saying that, let me throw it up here. Pink and white has been the ticket for the Raritan Bay as of now. Yeah, the water's been pretty clear up there, relatively clear. And the pink and white, or the pink shine, if you're using the Gulf colors, those always work. I mean, pink and white have always worked for Fluke.
Mm-hmm.
So when in doubt, if you want a color and it's not too dingy in the water, pink and white is definitely a good combination to go for. How do you hook up the spot?
Through the nose.
That's what I do. I actually will put it through the nose on a circle hook, and it really depends. The one thing that you got to keep in mind is you want to pull that fish down to the bottom. So you want to have something that's going to keep it down low. Now, spot will naturally want to stay low, but you want them to have their nose like burying into the bottom. You want them within an inch or two of the bottom. So hook it that way. Don't hook them right in the middle of the back under the dorsal fin. It's not going to do anything. You want something that's going to pull them down. So I would hook them in the mouth. Sometimes I actually hook them through the lower jaw so they can keep their mouth open and keep breathing easily. But they can really go for a very, very long time if you hook them up well.
Let's see what else we have. Jay, he said, by the way, just his luck trying to watch a live show since last fall. This is the first one, and now it's the last. So, and he thanks us for our work. So we thank you, Jay, for tuning in or attempting to and being a part of all this. So,
yeah, I agree. All right, we'll hit one last one before we do our final sign off from this one. And this one is going to be from Chris Frizzell. Would incoming or outgoing tide be better? And here's the way I'm going to answer that. It really depends. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the trends. So it can change day to day. Typically, trends stick around for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But it can change very quickly. So sometimes it'll be an incoming bite. Sometimes it'll be an outgoing. But I think the thing to remember, and I think what most people misconstrue about incoming versus outgoing, those are different spots. So it is a rare spot that is excellent on both incoming and outgoing on the same day, because you have to think about it by the way the structure is underneath the water column and how the water flows over that, and figure out, is that going to funnel the bait into an ambush predator's waiting mouth? And quite often, you think about these ledges. Well, not all ledges are made the same. You can have a drop from 5 feet to 20 feet with a nice sharp ledge, but if it's facing in one direction, it's great on the outgoing, but it's going to be terrible on the incoming because it's going to be getting hit broadside, and you're not going to want to be on the deep side of that. You want to be on the other side of it, either up shallow or find another one where it's coming off the shallow and dropping down into the deep. So it really depends. The one caveat I will say, when the water gets hot and it starts to get uncomfortable for the flounder, I prefer outgoing. And it's not because it's better, it's because it's easier. The less water in the backwaters, the less places that these fish can be. And the shallower it is in the shallows, which means it pushes them deeper. So they will push into these channels. They will push deep. Well, there's a lot more shallow areas in almost every single backwater situation in the United States than there are deep water backwaters. So it takes all of that surface area and it just kind of knocks out the vast majority of it. You say, look, it's 85-degree water. They're not going to be sitting up here in the middle of the afternoon in 4 feet of water. They're going to be in the deepest area they can find that's in the middle of all this 4-foot water, and it's going to be right here. And then you can pick those spots. So that's what I would say about the tides. Incoming, outgoing, it doesn't really matter to me unless it's hot water. Then I like outgoing just because the less water, the less places they can be.
So, I'm the opposite of you with that, because for me, when the water is cool, you're going to want that water to roast in the sun and warm up. So I feel the outgoing tide is usually better because the water is warm, the fish are active, and then vice versa.
Well, no, I'm saying outgoing. As it's outgoing, you're looking
right.
at
so when the water temps, right? I'm looking at it as the water temps being 70 to 75 degrees. It's still fairly cool for the summer. Right. So when the tide comes in, the tide, the water's sitting there. It's the mud's warming it up. So on the outgoing tide was when everything's going to be more active. Versus when the water's 80 something degrees, the incoming water is going to make it more comfortable for the fish to move around. So your incoming tide would be a better bite. Do you get what I'm saying?
I got you.
That's the way I've always felt it worked. But
gotcha.
I could be wrong.
And that's the good thing, because we don't have to agree, and we will both outfish each other on various days. In various conditions.
Matter.
Yeah, we got to make sure that everyone realize we're not saying everything here is a fact. We're basing on our experience, and I can give anecdotal information. For me, I stated what works for me, and for Ed, he stated what works for him. And I fish with Ed, and I know that there are certain times where he is just going to outperform, and he loves a spot, and I'm like, oh, I hate this. And then all of a sudden, Ed's pulling in keepers. I'm like, oh, he was right.
It goes both ways.
Well, if it didn't, then it would be really boring. If everybody could figure it out, it would be really boring out there. So, yeah, I like the variety. So, all right. So we got to wrap this up. We've gone 10 minutes over. The last thing real quick, John Kern, when I'm using a sabiki rig for spot, I am putting fish bites on there. Really, really small pieces of fish bites. And
ain't nobody got time for that. Just drop it down, John. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I use the fish bites. There's another thing we don't agree on.
Well, that's what them little triangle pieces of flasher for, is to for the fish to see it and then just bite it.
I know. It's just it's my thing. It's what I've always done, and that could just be it. I'm just so used to it. And maybe I should try it without some time and see if it really makes any difference. But
I don't think it does.
May not. So, all right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in one last time to this, to the live stream. The podcast episodes will continue, and it's going to be in a different format. It'll be me and the guest. Ed's not going to be jumping in on those. And as I mentioned, going to be doing a lot of live things within the community of Salt Strong. So if you're a Salt Strong Insider member, keep an eye out on the community, maybe follow me in there. And then that way, when I post something saying, hey, we're going live on this day at this time, you'll know when it is. Or you can just watch the replays after. Ed will be joining for some of those. And again, Ed, if you want to keep watching his individual videos, is going to continue to post on the Fat Dad Fishing YouTube channel.
Yep. And I'll be in the Insider Club, and I'm on all social media, whether it's myself or Captain Hank. So if anybody needs to get a hold of me, I'm definitely reachable. So,
yeah. So, all right. Well, everyone, thank you to everybody who's ever supported this show.
Yes.
And again, we may be back later this year, right? You
haven't seen The Last of Us.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like this show is going away for now, and that's all I'm going to commit to. But thank you to everybody. It's meant a lot to us. We have a lot of fun doing this. Love you all. And until next time, whenever that is, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul, it was pain.